Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agroforestry, what it is and how it can revolutionize your life with Erik Lehtinen at NOFA New Hampshire's 20th Annual Winter Conference. I'm Laura Angers, NOFA New Hampshire's Program Coordinator, and I'll be hosting the session today with Kate Dabrowski, NOFA New Hampshire Board Member. First, please note that we're recording this session and all sessions throughout the conference, and we'll share the recordings with you at the end of the week. Everyone will be muted during the workshop, so please type your questions into the chat box throughout the discussion or throughout the presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So ask questions along the way. Either Kate or I will read out your questions when we get to the Q&A portion of the session. And for technical issues, please feel free to communicate publicly through the chat or message me privately. And now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that this conference is taking place on the land of the Pennacook tribe, or Ndakana, the Abenaki word for the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki and Wabanaki peoples, past and present. And we acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways and the Alnobak, or people who have stewarded this land through the generations. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Erik Lehtinen of the University of Missouri.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction. I will share my screen and we'll begin the presentation. Awesome. You should be seeing agroforestry there, a slide. Excellent. So thank you for your time and attention. This time yesterday, I'm joining you from Lancaster, New Hampshire, in Coös County. And this time yesterday, I was in the middle of about a 3-hour stint of plowing out my uphill driveway out of my place, which was an adventure, that's for sure. And it's nice to be inside today, nice and warm with all of you. I'm a graduate student at the University of Missouri. You may ask yourself, how does that work with a person in New Hampshire? It's a pretty long commute, but by the power of technology, I've been pursuing my master's degree in agroforestry through the University of Missouri, which is a great resource, not only for me personally, as it's allowed me to do some pretty cool stuff, but as you'll learn at the end of the presentation today, it can be a resource for you, if only for you to get on a mailing list, and there's presentations and things that will be of interest to you. Of course, we're a little bit of a disadvantage being on Zoom because I can't have the interactive experience that I would so very much like to have in a classroom setting, where I can see your eyes and your smiles and see looks of confusion on your face. So you'll have to be diligent if you have any questions to make sure you write them down, and I'm definitely going to allow some space for questions. I'd really prefer that format. But I wanted to, just so we're speaking the same language, present some terms to you, some concepts which may spark some ideas and some questions. And so let's begin with that. Let me get the slides going here. There we go. When you hear the term agroforestry, some of you may know exactly what that means. Some of you may think you know what it means, and some may be scratching your head right now trying to figure it out. Technically, it's a management system that combines agriculture and trees to address a number of issues: conservation issues, building a profitable farm enterprise, and supporting communities around those farms. So it's important to understand that agroforestry as a concept has been practiced for thousands and thousands of years. It is known in the global South as really the system of agriculture, where there is a integration of what we would conceive of as traditional agricultural practices with forestry. In the North, that has not been the case. We've gone through a process in our history of mechanization, scaling agriculture to the point where it has not been profitable to do that at that scale. But I'm going to make a case, and I think it'll be an easy case with the audience that we have today that there is a better way to produce in a way that not only provides income, sustainable income, interest, protection of the environment, but actually provides a product to a family and to the community that is superior in every way. And I see it as a revolutionary act to move any kind of agricultural paradigm from what we have, which is a commercialized, industrialized form of agriculture, to something that's much smaller in scale, but I think is more helpful to the world in general. And like I say, the big problem is that agriculture has been commoditized. And so if we have a situation where, this isn't so much the issue in New Hampshire as an example, but if I'm interested in growing corn, I have a very big disadvantage. And if I want to grow a product organically, I have an even larger disadvantage if I'm going to compete in the marketplace. So or even something is, to bring it down, something as simple as milk, dairy. I mean, dairy farms used to be sort of the bread and butter, no pun intended, of agriculture. A family farm, a dairy farm, was the tried and true way to make a living. And anybody that either has lived through it or has studied it can see that over the last 40 years, dairy farms have gone away, primarily because the product itself has become commoditized. So a smaller producer has had a choice to either get out of the business of making that product or to add some kind of value added proposition. So maybe it's something specialized like goat milk, or something even more specialized like goat milk soap, or something along those, cheese, or something along those lines. So that's the response to the larger problem. Of course, we also have a problem in that New Hampshire is rocky and doesn't lend itself to traditional crops. And that's not my opinion, that's historical fact, as you can ask many of the folks of our ancestors who moved from the rocky New England farms out to the lovely, loamy, lush, open farms of Iowa and Indiana. They left in droves, and a land that was primarily agricultural, or at least very heavily forested, a very barren landscape in terms of trees. Over the course of that transition, we have seen trees grow back and former agricultural land revert back to its to that forested stands of timber, and of course New Hampshire today still remains a large timber producer, but in the traditional space, that is an issue for anyone planning on doing agriculture here. And then, of course, there is the global problem, which we all have some ownership of and some responsibility to work to correct. And while carbon is a very, very important element in our, we're made of carbon, we need carbon, and all that stuff. Too much carbon can lead to bad things. And so we, through the instituting of trees, a great mechanism to sequester carbon away. And the nice thing about agroforestry is that sometimes some of the practices we're going to talk about can be implemented in places, lands that have been considered marginal, hillsides, or just areas that don't lend themselves to mechanization, perhaps. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that. So putting some of those marginal lands back into production in a way that makes sense economically, ecologically, morally, is something that we can look at. And this is really the whole topic of my conversation with you today, is how to do that in a better way. How can we bring valuable products to the market, and most importantly, make a living? Whether we're doing this for our primary economic, the way we support our family, or if it's something ancillary, either way, there are some utilizing agroforestry practices and looking at the way we do things on our farms can move the needle a little bit economically for us and bring forth all those really great benefits that I've been mentioning. So just so we're speaking the same language in terms of what agroforestry is, it's essentially 6 practices. It's been traditionally 5, but the last one, urban food forest, is considered an agroforestry methodology. And we'll go through each of them, but just so we're, you're familiar with the terms, there's alley cropping, silvopasture, forest farming, riparian forest buffers, windbreaks, and urban food forests. And immediately, if you're looking at the roots of those words, you might have an idea of what they are. I'm going to also, as we go along, define what they're not. Sometimes there's some misconceptions about that, and actually some practices that become not so helpful. But those are the 6 traditional practices of agroforestry. So alley cropping is an interesting idea and is sometimes hard to be implemented by people because farmers speak with each other, and there is a little bit of peer pressure. In my work as a graduate student, I am very interested in the human dimensions of implementing things like agroforestry, things that people are not used to doing. And so when we come up with a practice like alley cropping, which is essentially just basically rows of trees and or shrubs to create alleys within agricultural or horticultural crops are produced. What we're looking at here essentially is you can, in this particular picture, it's a great example of basically a field being harvested for hay, wide enough. The alley that the tractor is driving down is wide enough to harvest that product, whatever it is. In this case, it's hay. That's something that is providing income immediately, maybe once or twice, even 3 times a year for that farmer. However, between those rows, there are other alleys of trees. And at first glance, taking a perfectly good pasture and planting trees will have your neighbors perhaps scratching their heads and maybe even criticizing you a little bit. But the idea behind alley cropping is that, yes, you have a crop that is something you can utilize right away, but we're also investing for the future. So it may be that those trees produce some kind of fruit. That is the obvious choice. That could be an apple orchard as an example. In some areas of the country, it's nuts that will be able to be supported. And last but not least, at some point, depending on the species that we planted of tree, we could also even potentially harvest that for the wood. In whatever variety where we've planted. Sometimes there are alley cropping situations where there's one row of crop that's that sort of hay, that immediate every year revenue production crop. There might be a second row to the right that is something a little bit more sort of reasonably within a couple of woody perennial of some kind that's used for ornamentals or whatever. And then the third crop could be something much longer term in terms of a tree. The idea here, the takeaway from the alley cropping, is that we're putting in multiple crops, utilizing the land in a way that is deriving revenue at different times of the year, different years perhaps, and bringing forth all of those really good objectives that I talked about earlier, that there's a diversification of income and that there is actually you're putting capacity into the land to sequester carbon. The other thing I might add is that by looking at the field itself, that we're also protecting the soil. So the soil is constantly protected by some kind of cover crop, and is able to just, when we look at sort of soil microbiology, the less we're disturbing it, the better. So if there's trees planted in a few alleys and that's simply just not getting ripped up on any kind of regular basis, that's doing something for growing that soil underneath. So valuable practice there, alley cropping. Forest farming is something that you may already be sort of used to hearing. The big one that comes right to mind immediately is maple production. Basically, in forest farming, we're utilizing a forest to cultivate a high value crop under the protection of a managed tree canopy. I have pictures here of mushrooms. So a lot of the crops that grow in a forest farming situation, in addition to like something like a evaluated product like maple syrup or maple sap for maple syrup, mushroom production, things come to mind like ginseng, things that can be utilized as a product of that forest. There is a lot of work being done. Probably many of you you would know even better than I. There are things that can be harvested within the forest as a product themselves. There may be nuts that roots that are valuable, and that there's a very specific market for it. Just a quick story. Over in New York State, in the Catskill Mountains, there was a very large Asian farming concern that came in and was buying or leasing large swaths of upstate New York Catskill mountain farmland. And they had the same sort of dynamic as we have in New Hampshire, of a sort of formerly very heavily farmed, reverted back, successional growth forest, return to that. And what was happening was, in the Catskill Mountains, in the global ginseng marketplace, New York Catskill Mountain ginseng is like the highest rated ginseng you can get. It's old and it's gnarly and it's kind of hard to find, but it has values and properties that are highly coveted in Asian markets. So this large Asian concern came in and was buying or leasing land and just buying up ginseng, and just making a lot of landowners a lot of money. It's a highly coveted crop that people, before it was identified as something valuable, didn't recognize. What is as a plant, something the deer ate or something. So people now are actually literally planting ginseng replenishing the ginseng, and it grows under very specific circumstances, like the north facing slope. It grows near maple trees as a strange thing. Sounds like something we could do. The takeaway is that there are crops that are growing within a forest. Forests do not need to be chopped down and whole to have value in a timber sale. Even some of the wood, some of the specialty wood, so the burls, some specialty trees and cherries, are highly coveted by woodworkers. So there's some selective practice of wood harvesting that can be done in a kind of under the banner of forest farming. What forest farming is not, I'd just like to add kind of a public service announcement. Forest farming is not letting the cows out into the back 40 woodlot. That is a little bit in the realm of silvopasture, which we'll get to in a moment. But there's a we don't want to destroy the forest ecology. By just allowing ruminants to go through on a regular basis to destroy, but that can be done on a rotational practice, which is a great segue for the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, went the wrong way. Nope, one more time. How come? Silvopasture. Silvopasture is the deliberate, and the key word here is the deliberate integration of trees and grazing livestock operations on the same land. The picture that you're seeing here is would be a little bit south. It was actually taken a little bit south of New Hampshire, but the concept still applies. Coniferous trees with pasture land underneath. What does this do? Okay, those trees, that's going to be pulpwood trees in this case. Same could be applied here in New Hampshire. Not a problem at all. Relatively fast growing coniferous trees, supporting agriculture below. A rotational practice of bringing in sheep, ruminants, the sheep, the goats, the cows, bringing them in. The trees add less stress to their lives. In the summertime, they're being cooled. There's less stress. There's tons and tons of research that's been done on improving livestock production by integrating them into a silvopasture situation. Very, very symbiotic relationship. The key is as long as the livestock are being rotated through, as opposed to just going through and destroying the sort of the whole ecosystem of the forest there. Riparian forest buffer, very interesting concept. And I try to pick a picture. By the way, all these pictures come from the National Agroforestry Center. There'll be a link to it at the end, which you can take a picture of, or can send it to you, whatever you like. Great resource. United States Department of Agriculture runs it. That's a little bit of an aside. I took this picture from there. Very interesting. When we think about farmland, they'll oftentimes have some body of water running through it, and it's kind of considered a wasteland, or maybe folks are farming right up to it, and it's causing some soil erosion. Not good. Not good at managing any kind of a flood, and there's no flood management whatsoever if there's just a stream running through a cornfield that's been cultivated right up to the border. So what's happening here is a riparian forest buffer would be like a sort of an area just around a stream or a lake or some kind of a wetland, but it's being managed in a way that provides some kind of conservation benefit and or some kind of a crop. So as we look at it, if I were to look at the middle of that stream, or that creek or whatever that's going through there, you'll see that there's a band of green, and then there might be a band of brown, and then there's a sort of a cultivated area immediately to that left. So there's at least 3 bands of color. So if one thought of the immediate green surrounding the water as just a place that's simply not cultivated, it's simply planted with species of trees and bushes and flowers or whatever that support wildlife, that attract wildlife, you have immediately done a great service to every living creature in that area. But what I think what you have really done is you've allowed that soil to be maintained and have some integrity so that it doesn't erode away and change. It does create a floodplain buffer for you. But as you move away from the center of that stream, it's also an opportunity to do some measure of alley cropping. So you might have some bushes. You might plant rows of blueberries or something that you would want to sell in there. Also supporting that sort of buffer, but providing you a mechanism to grow a crop in an area that might not have been cultivated before. And then last, moving out, it could be another row of another crop, maybe a small tree, something along those lines. But the idea is that you're creating some kind of a buffer between that water and the actual sort of hard cultivation that's going on there. It's a little bit less intensive, but utilized in any case. One thing that some people have tried to develop on their land, and you might have different philosophy about this, and I'm just saying I'm reporting here, is that this creates an opportunity for you to provide hunting leases to people. There may be, you may feel that's okay, and that this is creating a wildlife mecca and that you're supporting on your farm. So yet another revenue stream that could come in at alternating intervals, supporting wildlife, supporting conservation, all of that good stuff. So just something to think about. Again, we can come back to that more if there's more questions. I just want to get through it now so you have the common vocabulary, also mindful of the time. Interesting practice here, windbreaks or shelter belts. Something we deal with a lot here in New Hampshire is snow. As I mentioned yesterday, I was dealing with a lot of snow yesterday, and I was very grateful for all those lovely trees around my place that helped break down, and so I don't have big drifts of snow going across what is already a highly accumulated driveway. What happens with a shelter break or a windbreak? Obviously, again, same conservation ideas. Slowing the wind creates a more beneficial condition for soils. It stops soil erosion. We want to cover that soil. We want to have cover crops on that soil regularly. There have been tons and tons of studies, even with barren soil, when a raindrop hits it, the soil dispersion, even with a raindrop hitting a spot of soil, just completely annihilates it, and over time, wind and water really takes that soil away, brings it to places we don't want it or where we need it ourselves. So these shelter breaks can be utilized not only for conservation of heat on and cooling on our homes, but can also protect animals. It's a shelter place for them. It provides a place for birds to bring all the beneficial benefits that they do. The list goes on and on. I get so excited when I think about Shelterbelts. I was reading a study, I think it was last year, that these were being regularly used around more on the Midwest, where they have these huge sort of farms, industrial sized farms. Anybody that's ever driven by a pig farm knows that pigs, while they themselves are clean animals in terms of their hygiene, they are, it's my experience on every single farm that has been raising pigs is very, very smelly. And so the practice there was to put wind shelter belts around these farms, so that as the wind went across the landscape, it would actually hit these very large trees, or a series of trees, and it would sort of literally go over the pig farming facility, and would take the smell of that off and away. And so the relationship with the neighbors was enhanced. Well, that might not be a huge what's the word I'm looking for? It might not be a huge consideration for you as an organic farmer in New Hampshire. The smell, maybe it is, who knows? The windbreak or shelter belt can do a lot in terms of not only providing, again, crops, potentially those windbreaks that you're planting can be trees. It could be a Christmas tree farm for all we know. There's a lot. The idea that the takeaway is that we want to plant rows or some kind of a barrier, or numbers of barrier that control that wind and the snow and the I guess let's say the stress on the livestock and on the home. So it does have some value there. And of course, these same shelter belts can be harvested on a regular basis, replanted, and so you have a system of agriculture going there that's beneficial. This one is, I mentioned, it's kind of a late Johnny come lately in the world of agroforestry, in that it was because it's been a kind of a variety of one of the other five. But the idea is that the world, whether we like it or not, is becoming increasingly urbanized. And even while we have a very small urban presence in the state of New Hampshire, we do have some urban areas. I say this as a person who was born in New York City, now a city of like, I think 9 million people or something. So a very large city, Manchester as an example, is a very relatively small, maybe a large town in New York, but everything's relative. The idea is there is a need for a food security for everybody. It's been a real, I don't know, I guess a mission of mine to help people understand where their food comes from. I'm sure it's the same frustration that you have in your dealings with the public. Helping people understand where food comes from, what it costs to produce food, the energy that it takes to produce food, human and otherwise, is lost very much in urban areas. And in fact, our urban food deserts do occur. There's lots of places in urban areas where it's underutilized marginal land. So implementing, I mean, you can see right here, immediately there is a sort of almost alley cropping thing happening. You're becoming experts in agroforestry. There's almost like an alley cropping thing happening here on this sort of marginal land in a city. A great use of that. So we have nice trees. Hopefully they're not a species that are going to grow up into those power lines and the power company's going to come and chop half of them off. Maybe it's a fruit-bearing tree. Hopefully it is. Maybe a heritage fruit-bearing tree. Maybe we get some heritage New Hampshire apples up there, in there. So maybe some high bush blueberries growing there in the alley. Maybe some Christmas trees. Who knows? We can do whatever we want. We can be creative. But the idea is that we can take public land, marginal land, and utilize it in a way that actually brings food security and to that community. And even we can see, again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. You know, COVID really, hopefully, I don't know, I'm hoping that it taught some people some lessons. Global supply chain problems, particularly as it relates to food, can be ameliorated or reduced, maybe even eliminated, if I'm being very, very, enthusiastic about it, by producing your own food locally and organically, preferably. And it can be done. We have lots of spaces to do it. The question is that education portion. It's really something that I've really strived to do, is to become an apostle for agroforestry. And my hope is that in getting this message this morning, that it plants a seed for you to think, okay, where can I do this? How can I break out of a traditional paradigm and maybe think about some crops, think about some practices that I can improve my work without and help make my life a little easier. So right to that ideal, what does this do? It produces a diversification of on-farm income. That's great. We all need that. I don't know anyone who would possibly be on this Zoom call today that would not want that income at different times of the year, maybe even in varying years, so that there's not a feast and famine type of a situation going on in the revenue stream. 2, less inputs. Let nature do its course. Nature wants to do what nature wants to do. We can help that. We can help that process. We can help with not having to water as much, because trees are creating micro climates where that is not as necessary. Protecting that soil, growing that soil, and really, from my standpoint, improving the crops. If I am growing livestock to sell, I want happy, healthy animals that I can harvest and I can sell and provide customers with a good product. I want good vegetables. I want a diverse crop that I can offer to the public. I want to offer things that are something that people don't even know that they might even like. When we think about historical farms, we don't think of shiitake mushrooms, but there are places that want that. In fact, I'll even tell you something super quick. I was yesterday in Manchester at the New Hampshire Farm and Garden Show, and there was a food bank display there, and I went over and checked, and they were giving samples. And when I think of a food bank, sad to say, I think of it as, well, they open up the can of Campbell's, cream of mushroom soup, open it up, heat it up, and serve it in the soup kitchen. No, au contraire. I was talking to one of the chefs there at that food bank, and he was serving up a mushroom soup that they had a partnership with a producer who had some disposable mushrooms, like the ones that he didn't want particularly, but they were perfectly good: lion's mane, shiitake, all these like really cool exotic mushrooms. Chopped it up, made this beautiful soup. I tasted it. I almost fell on the floor. I was like, I want to go to this food bank. I want to be a regular person at this food bank. How do I qualify to be here? I mean, this was an amazing thing. So the public doesn't even recognize yet what is possible in terms of food, diversity of food. We've gone from this, we had this incredible, I think about apples. I'm doing a research project on apples right now. We went from thousands of varieties of apples to 20. And that's a shame, because our palate is missing out on this. So as organic, I would call it probably small scale farmers, there's such an open marketplace for us to provide products to the consumer that they don't even know they're going to love. So something to think about. Of course, we cannot forget our neighbors, our very, very, very important neighbors. We are in partnership with them. Our pollinators are in partnership with us. We have to feed them. We have to provide them habitat. Agroforestry supports pollinators like nothing else. All of the things, any one of the practices that I mentioned to you, aesthetically pleasing, economically viable, all good products to provide foraging resources for pollinators. A very underappreciated concept for them, landscape continuity. We want to get away from the patchwork quill and create large swaths of areas that they can travel within without any stressors to them. And from a Here's a $1 million word: phytoremediation. Curing soils that have been depleted or abused in some way with trees and plants that can heal that soil, that can support those pollinators. Very, very valuable. Key benefit to them. We all know that they are under stress. We all know, and probably some of us on this call even harvest from them. Forest farming, honey. You're probably already doing it, or near a forest or something. But my sense is that the people in this audience, this is not going to seem very foreign. But what I'm challenging you to think about is ways that you can improve or expand these ideas. Of course, I love goats, so I just had to throw this in. You know, who can go past a picture of a baby goat? I mean, that's just, I just love it. That's just for, you know, goats love agroforestry too. As I say, you may be doing all or some of these practices already. Hopefully you are. Okay, this is an important slide, very important slide, and I'm mindful of the time, so I'm almost done. I'll open up for some questions. 3 really, really good resources. If you have your camera, take a picture of it. If not, you can email me, or we'll get this to you, or just jot it down. Very easy to search. Most of the pictures that I created for this presentation came from the National Agroforestry Center, a wonderful place for you to spend some time just doing your thing, reading about the practices, learning. Just dive in. There's some really, really great stuff there. The second place is where I'm affiliated with, the Center for Agroforestry at the University of Missouri. Lots of seminars that are given virtually. There are things that happen in person as well. If you want to go take a trip out to Missouri, if you've been binge watching the Ozarks on Netflix, maybe you want to go visit Missouri, check it out. There's some great agroforestry research that's being done there. And then a little bit closer to home, we have the Cooperative Extension of New York, the Cornell University Agroforestry Center. It's in the Catskills. The Agroforestry Center is in the Catskills there, where I was mentioning that ginseng. In fact, that Asian concern, it's called Ginseng Farm, as in PHARM. The medicinal value of ginseng is being forest farmed in an area that is not supportive of traditional agriculture in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I went out there and I interviewed a farmer who was actually interested in selling their farm, and her her comment to me was, "There's nothing good about this land except growing beef on it." And that's true. She was growing beef on it and it did do that. But I was looking at the 120 acres that she had there that were not being utilized by the cows, and I thought, oh no, there's a lot more that can be done here. A lot more. Ginseng, shiitake, maple. I mean, there's a lot. Even things that we would think about as sort of New Hampshire maple syrup, which I love. How about creating products from trees that are not utilized in that way? Our state tree, the birch, some of those saps, they have qualities that we can utilize that are just not being utilized currently. So there's some space for some diversity of products coming out. Each of these three places are wonderful resources. I encourage you highly to utilize them. Every single one of them, you can get on a mailing list. There are regular seminars that are given virtually from the comfort of your room with your PJs on and a cup of hot chocolate, or whatever you like, whatever you drink, by your side. So definitely use that. And last but not least, these 3 books are, while not specifically agroforestry practice outlines, I love them. They absolutely should be part of your library. I recommend each of them highly. Restoration of Agriculture by Mark Shepard, wonderful, wonderful work. Restoring Your Soil by Dan Strickler, and Who Can Go Wrong with Gene Logsdon at Farming at Nature's Pace. I know that I am preaching to the choir when I say that I'm imagining that every single one of you have probably read it. Maybe you have well-worn copy of that book, but if you don't, I'm here to tell you, go ahead and get it. It is going to really open your eyes to a lot of what we're talking about here. And if you, of course, if you implement many of the practices that we're looking at here with some of the concepts mentioned in those books, I think you will find that your life will become easier, that you can have some sense of peace of mind and calm, knowing that your farm is doing some great things, not only for you and your family and your community, but for the world itself, and contributing to a good global ecological balance. And I just wanted to end with this last lovely quote, and I think it's so true, and how people oftentimes forget the value of farmers. Burn down your cities and leave our farms, and your cities will spring up again as if by magic. But destroy our farms and the grass will grow in the streets of every city in the country. Truer words have never been said. Truer words have never been said. If you would like to reach out to me for whatever reason, you are more than welcome to. My snail mail address is listed right there for you. P.O. Box 65, Lancaster, 03584. And of course, if you want, you can certainly just email me directly, and I will do my best to get you pointed in the right direction. And I guess with that, I should take any remaining time that I have for some questions.
Okay, we have a few here. Let's see. Phil says that his are grown into zone 5 and some zone 4, and he's in Dunbarton, New Hampshire, just outside of Concord. Where are you and what zone?
I'm a little bit north, so I'm in 4, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's 4. I'm in Coös County, so I'm about an hour from where he is living, north of them.
Great. Let's see. What can you tell us about the legality of exporting ginseng?
To my knowledge, there is absolutely no limitation on it whatsoever. I've spoken to numerous ginseng growers and brokers. It is a crop that grows in the entire Appalachian range, of which the Catskill Mountains in New York are part of. They're an ancient mountain range. They were once as big as the Himalayas. They are now much smaller because they've been around for a lot longer. There's a whole system of grading. Ginseng, as I mentioned, the gnarly, craggy, fat Catskill ginseng is the most coveted. There's cultivated ginseng, very thin and kind of skinny, also valuable, but not as valuable as that natural variety. But all the varieties are purchased regularly by brokers here in the United States and exported to primarily China for sale. At a very lucrative, I might add, very lucrative, to the point where there have been people poaching ginseng, I guess for lack of a better word, stealing ginseng off people's lands. It's a problem in the South, not so much in the North where people aren't always aware of it, but in the South, North Carolina as an example, it's a big problem.
Okay, great, thank you. Jan just inherited a 14-acre woodlot of mature mixed forest. And are there guidelines that help to turn this into food production without stripping all the trees?
Absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is just doing a little bit of timber stand improvement. So what that means is help in any given acre of land. I'll just say this as a framework. Any given acre of land, if there's 100 trees there, in 10 years, about 90% of those trees will be gone as a natural process. Other trees will fight for resources, primarily sun, and will kill out the smaller trees. That's just, that's just the way it works. We can help that process. I like to think of myself as a tree grower myself. So on my land, I will go in and select the trees that I really, really want to keep. They're really good. They're genetically, they look great. They're not diseased in any way, shape, or form. So I will trim some of the smaller trees around it to give it less competition. I really want to grow that tree. I do leave, as a matter of as policy, I guess, for lack of a word, I will leave some trees dead, standing trees. If there's a tree that I really, really don't want, I may girdle it so it's standing in place and it dies. So instead of bringing it down, and I do that primarily to provide places for insects to do their thing, which bring the birds and everybody else. So I like to do that as well. With a small plot like that, I would start right there alone, just making sure that the stand itself is healthy. If you wanted to bring some kind of practice, agroforestry practice, then you might look at clearing an alley and growing something in there, depending on the soil and the orientation of the hill or wherever that you're on. The thing that immediately comes to mind are blueberry bushes that could be planted in an alley in New Hampshire, in some kind of New Hampshire woodland. It's going to require felling of some trees to do an alley cropping situation. If you were running and you had enough land, and 14 acres I think is sufficient, and you're doing livestock, you could also do silver pasture in there. But if it's just a successional forest, you're going to need to do some timber stand improving and then figure out what the next step is in terms of what it is that you want to grow.
Okay, thank you. How would you suggest preparing a cherry pine maple forest that has understory filled with winged eponymous? And also, what is that? What's the next question?
And what is what? What's the last part?
Winged eponymous?
Winged equanimous. I can't say I'm familiar with winged equanimous.
Here, I'll draw. It's EPONYMOUS.
Boy, I'm gonna have
euonymus? Burning bush, someone says.
Oh, burning bush. Yeah, that's an
that's
an invasive. If I'm hearing the question right, like we're looking at some really awesome trees, and then we're looking at something that now is considered an invasive. If I'm hearing the question right, I would say really it's the same response as I was saying before. It's a matter of getting in there and clearing out selectively what we don't want to have. I'm not a big proponent of pesticides. I don't like pesticides at all. So I would never, I'm sure there's a time and a place for some of them somewhere, somehow, but not in my catalog. The invasives, whether it's burning bush or anything else, can be cleared out mechanically. Some people have been using goats for that. They're rotating goats through there. Actually, another agroforestry practice, running goats through selectively as a silver pasture. They will take care of all of those invasives that you'd ever want. Japanese knotweed, gone. You rotate goats through an area where there's those invasives growing 2 or 3 years in a row on a rotational basis, you will have fed your goats and you will have eradicated those invasives for a really, really long time. So that's a good question, and it leads immediately right to it. If you own goats, it's a great opportunity for you to rotate them through. If you don't own goats, maybe you can partner up with somebody that has some goats, run them through, and maybe do a little barter for their services. Maybe there's something you can give them in exchange for that service. But we have the problem we have pretty much universally in the United States is all this successional forest has taken up where there used to be beautiful farms, and with deer browse being such an issue, they eat up all the lovely trees and leave a lot of stuff that we don't want growing there. So we got to get in there and manually get rid of it ourselves. And the question is how or why you would do that, but there may be a space for you to go ahead and do that. Hopefully I answered your question.
Great, thank you. Someone just added a comment, said they replaced burning bushes here in Rhode Island with blueberries.
Oh, you're my hero. I love it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm glad that they mentioned that. That's exactly what I'm mentioning. If you have an invasive in there, get it out in a good, effective way, hopefully a natural way, a mechanical way, a goat's mouth, and replace it with something that's going to give you food or something you can sell.
great. Let's see, another question from Phil. Are there any agroforestry farms in southern New Hampshire that could be the source of field trips for K through 12 students?
That's a great question. I personally do not know of any farm. I'm sure there are. I should say that. I'm sure there are. I personally do not know of any. And if anyone knows of one, I would ask them to write down my email address and send it to me, because I would love to be on that field trip as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's wonderful. Let's see. There are no new questions. There are some comments from earlier in your presentation. Someone had asked about the difference between an agricultural and horticultural crop, and it was answered, but if you have an answer for that, please do explain.
Yeah, I think of agriculture as sort of like a very large umbrella, and horticulture as one channel of agriculture. Horticulture typically plants oriented. That's how I would. There's probably other nuances that you could add to that, but that would be my working definition.
Okay, great. Let's see. Someone thought there might be liability issues once you receive money for hunting rights on your land. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not an attorney, so I couldn't really answer that definitively. And so I would certainly recommend that any person considering that consult with an attorney. I do know that hunting leases are a regular practice. I know of at least 3 neighbors of mine in Coös County that have hunting leases. So my layman's answer is that I don't think that there is a liability issue, in terms of, I'm imagining if the person is thinking, a hunter goes on there and shoots somebody or some kind of problem. I don't think so, but I don't 100% know. It seems to me that it's almost equivalent to a renter. If I have a piece of property and I rent an apartment to you, if you commit a murder in my apartment building, I'm not responsible for that. I think it's the same, but only an attorney in New Hampshire could answer that definitively.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And another comment, someone noted that the smell of the hogs has something to do with the imbalance of carbon and nitrogen.
They are right.
Yeah.
They are right. They are 100% right. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat any pork products, but or anything meat related. But I've often, my observation has been, anytime I've been on a farm that is more organic or biodynamic in orientation, the smell of that farm has been significantly less than a farm that is not following those practices. And I see that as an imbalance within the animal's diet primarily. I'm sure everybody on the call would probably agree with that. It's notable. I mean, it's absolutely positively a phenomenon. And so that we have this industrialized farming system. There shouldn't be 5,000 hogs in one place. They're just, there really probably shouldn't be that system. But if we are to have that system, there is at least some mode of alleviating that that environmental impact with something like a shelter break, let alone the management of some of the waste water.
Okay, great. And Shauna also suggests that wood chips are an answer. Yeah. And can come from the agroforestry system.
Absolutely.
She also noted that the power company where she lives does a 5-year pruning rotation, which is a perfect like pollarding harvest cycle for leaf fodder.
One last thing, mulch is a really interesting phenomena. It hasn't been done in New Hampshire. I'd love to see it done in New Hampshire, but there are loblolly pines and more towards like North Carolina, South Carolina, that have been set up where they harvest the pine needles off of the loblolly pine. They're really long needles, and they use it for mulch. And I was at a University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension meeting, that was probably a couple of years ago, and there was a person actually presenting on the value of mulch, different types of mulch. And pine mulch is like highly, highly coveted. If there was a way to capture pine needle mulch. We have an industry in New Hampshire that is under-tapped and underutilized. Of course, it's a way so something to think about. That what I hope you get out of it, I know we're wrapping up. What I hope you get from this presentation is ideas. I need to go research that more. I need to go, I need to think about how I can implement this here. This is the starting point for you to maybe think about some things that can really improve your life, your experience, and your revenue flow. That's what I hope you get out of this. And of course, if you have any questions in that process, please, please, please reach out to me. I will do my best to get you pointed in the right direction.
Great, thank you. And Edith, one of our board members, noted that Beaver Brook Association in Hollis is not managing for agroforestry field trips at the moment, but they do all sorts of forward-thinking forestry projects and school field trips. So they might be open to the idea of an agroforestry project.
Can you repeat the name of that?
Beaver Brook Association in Hollis.
Hollis, okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's see. So anything else you'd like to add before we close?
No, thank you, Laura. I think I've said everything I came to say, and I hope that it was a valuable use of time for everyone. And I look forward to any questions or comments on the back end if anybody has them.
Great,
Thank you.
Great. So this concludes our workshop. Erik, thank you for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you everyone for being here today. We hope you'll join us for the next session, all about bees, at 10:30 this morning. We will pop the workshop links in the chat. And also please mark your calendars for our upcoming programs, NOFA New Hampshire's Farm Bill listening session on February 17th, and our Feeding the Family Organic Gardening series, which is 6 sessions from February 22nd to May 3rd. Also check out our bulk order program to save on farming and gardening supplies. And the order deadline is February 28th. Let's see, with pickup on March 19th and 20th in Andover, New Hampshire, Ware, and Rochester. And just a note to check out our virtual exhibitor fair featuring 17 different exhibitors, including our conference bookstore hosted by Main Street Bookends. And when you order any books through Main Street Bookends, include NOFA New Hampshire in the comments, and 20% of proceeds will be donated back to NOFA New Hampshire. And I am just putting some links in the chat here, including the workshop links so that you can join us for the next session, which starts in 30 minutes. So thank you again.